It is the top of the hour, so we are going to get started with our June assessment and accountability update. Thanks for joining us. We hope you're enjoying some nice warm sunshine today. Okay, just a couple of reminders in the housekeeping side of the webinar. Please type your questions in the questions box. We'll pause throughout the presentation and answer your questions as we go. If you have questions after the conclusion of the webinar, please email us and we'll get them answered to you as soon as we can. If you need any technical assistance, please send a chat in the chat box and we'll try to assist. And our presentation is posted as a document, so you can download that and follow along. We'll get started with a couple of updates for accountability. I'm going to turn things over to Kevin for the first couple of slides of information.
All right, good morning, everyone. So as Carlin mentioned, we have several assessment data releases coming up during this summer. And as part of that process, we have a few items that you'll want to pay attention to for accountability purposes. So you'll see those listed here on this slide, and we're going to go ahead and walk through these items. The first one is the access appeals process. So that window is open now, and it's going to close on the 21st. And since that is ongoing, Andrew is going to discuss that appeals process in more detail in his slides and how that ties into ELMS. So we'll move on to the next one here. We have the IC submission deadline, which is next Friday, the 21st. So please work closely with your LEA's IC person to verify your data, as it's the end of the year submission and it's particularly important. And before we move on to the next item we had in that release list, we wanted to highlight why some of those components are particularly important in the context of accountability. So I'll turn it over to Carlin to talk about those items.
Thanks, Kevin. The College and Career Readiness Indicator in our accountability system depends on the IC course enrollment file. There is no appeal window for this indicator, so it is imperative that you work closely with your IC coordinator to verify the data. This would include the dual credit flag and the course exit reason and course codes for advanced placement courses, IB or International Baccalaureate, and Career Technical Education capstone courses. The advanced math measure is also considered in our accountability system and reported for grade 8 and grade 9. Any math courses with a higher assignment code are considered advanced, except for applied mathematics, which is code 02151. These business rules will be included and posted, and we would like to encourage you to review the content description that's listed here. We've linked that in the assignment credentials manual. The student demographics file is probably the most critical. This includes school and district entry and exit dates. We use this to calculate continuous enrollment status and identify the base school for dual enrolled students. Your enrollment date will determine whether or not your school is accountable for the student for accountability calculation purposes. The entry and exit reason also affects cohort graduation rate. The flag earned industry certification is part of the College and Career Readiness Indicator. Your grade level for students is imperative when we consider grade level tested for our assessment results. Off-grade test results will not count towards participation. And finally, that private homeschool flag is the only way to remove a private or homeschool student from accountability calculations and participation rates. Accountability also focuses on equity. So student subgroup performance is also important. It would be very wise to check students' race and ethnicity, their demographic program enrollment in special education, the economically disadvantaged, gender, homeless, and military connectedness status. And we also have some characteristics in our system that are based on data entered in other platforms. We would encourage you to work closely with the program office to make sure students are identified correctly in the English Learner Management System, or ELMS, and the Migrant Student Information System, or MSIS. And foster care status is a file we received from the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare, but it's really important to have your state EDU-ID numbers correct. Just another verification tip, we do have the cohort grad rate preview application. You can also look at your data as you are finalizing your IC report for June and identifying students who have graduated. If a child is still part of your cohort and you thought they transferred to a different Idaho public school, You can verify that. If you see them still in your list, you could contact the receiving school. The receiving school sometimes assigns a new or different EDU ID number, or the child actually never attended the receiving school, so you can follow up with your LEA IC coordinator for more information. You can also follow up with parents or guardians in a more appropriate time manner than waiting until 3 or 4 years later. Also, if you see any inaccurate data displayed in the application, please follow up with your local IC coordinator. Another verification tip for IC is to download the Idaho Unit Record Collection Items and Option Sets for more information on the various codes in IC and how this can affect your accountability results. As Kevin mentioned, we have the ISAT appeals window opening July 8th. And July 19th, it closes at 5 p.m. This is an opportunity to verify your students' participation in the ISAT, the alternate assessments, and the end of course assessment. Reviewing your participation rate is critical. 95% of eligible students must participate in these assessments. If they don't, your proficiency rate will be impacted by the percent of students not participating. Now back over to Kevin for some other information.
Thank you. And so this is just a note that we encourage you to actually use the data after doing all this kind of verification. So if you went through the official appeals and submissions process, you don't have to stop there. Just as an example, you could download your student results from the participation appeals site. And then you could use some of the tools on our website, for example, to look at growth for the past year and then looking forward to next year. So we just really want to make sure that you take advantage of the data that you have from these processes. So once we have the appeal data complete and lined up with all that information from IC, we're going to move on to this year's accountability calculation. And although we're going to run the CSI up and CSI grad calculations this year, this is just a note that we will not have new identifications for those categories, but we will have new identifications for TSI and ATSI. And if you want to look at the business rules, we don't anticipate any major changes right now, and you can review last year's rules at the link on this slide, and we'll provide updates as needed. So let's just quickly review those TSI, TSI, and ATSI categories so we're all on the same page. So CSI stands for Comprehensive Support and Improvement. And these are the schools in the bottom 5%. That's based on the composite value created by the measures in this table. So again, we won't be doing that identification this year, even though we'll run those numbers. TSI is Targeted Support and Improvement, and these are schools who are identified based on performance gaps for economically disadvantaged students, English learners, different race and ethnicity minority groups, and students with disabilities. And then ATSI is Additional Targeted Support and Improvement. And for ATSI, we run the CSI up calculation. So we use all those indicators in that table we referenced, but we run it by individual student groups rather than among all students. And if that composite value is below the value we have for the highest performing CSI up school, the school is identified for ATSI. And just one more time, as a quick clarification, we'll be running those CSI up calculations for monitoring, and we'll be using that for the cutoff for ATSI, but we won't identify new CSI up schools. So that was a really brief overview. If you want to look back at sort of how all those calculations work and the definitions there, you can learn more using that business rules document that we referenced earlier, or we have a bunch of accountability summaries on the SBE's accountability page. And you can access those using the URL on this slide. So finally, when all of those accountability calculations are complete, we're going to update the new Idaho School Report Card. And we anticipate that release will be on August 15th. And we have the URL available on this slide for the school report card. If for some reason you haven't checked it out already, we highly recommend looking at the site and reviewing your district and school data there. There's a lot of great information. And so that's the kind of end of the summer process for that. And I'm going to shift gears a little bit now to look for the survey for next year and how we're going to address that. So kind of a different focus. So just as a reminder, all our surveys are closed right now. Thank you for participating on all of those throughout the spring. And we also appreciate your feedback on the process since it was new for us to do the parent surveys and the staff surveys, and the student surveys covered a larger grade span this year. So thank you again for all your work there. And if you are interested in looking at your data there, you can use Advanced Ed's eProve system to look at preliminary data. So if you want to review any of the student, parent, or staff engagement survey results, you can do so there. And we have some instructions for doing that on the URL that's on this slide. So looking ahead to next year for those surveys, we do have a few changes based on your feedback. And we wanted to highlight those just so you can sort of plan ahead for next year. We're anticipating that all 3 engagement surveys are going to be administered during the same window next year. And that would be February 18th through March 31st. And additionally, the student survey would be on a new platform where you can actually track which students have participated. And that was something we heard from lots of folks this year as a challenge in the student survey, was that you couldn't track who had and had not participated. And we think next year you should be able to have the opportunity to address that. So hopefully that'll make life a lot easier for y'all. So I'm ready to turn it over to Kevin Chandler, unless we have any questions we want to address.
We do have a question from Kelly Glenn. Using ELMS, the ELMS versus IC report, we have several students on that list. Do we need to have all of that cleaned up for the June IC upload? Kelly, it's best to clear all of the data in the June 2019 IC upload and any discrepancies that you can find and identify and correct at that time. If you have outstanding questions that are specific or things you disagree with, we would be happy to walk through those individually. In some cases, that has been brought to our attention in other districts where there may be some discrepancies that schools feel they need to look more into. So we're happy to walk through those with you. Lori Wolf, Kevin has asked, can you tell us what platform will be used for this survey?
Yeah, so it's still an Advanced Ed platform, so we're still going to have the same vendor. They've just developed a kind of slightly different system that allows you to roster students beforehand and then track which students have or have not participated, because you could see if certain IDs have been used or not.
I think that's our only question, so we can move on, I think, to Kevin Chandler for an update on science.
Excellent. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much to everybody that made the ISAT testing this year such a success. For our grade 5, we included some embedded field test items, and then for our grade 8, we had about 4,000 students tested in a voluntary independent field test. So thanks so much for all the schools and districts that participated in those field tests. The next steps for those field test items are 2 workshops that we're going to have scheduled for this summer. Rubric validation is basically just checking out to make sure the rubric on those particular items are working correctly. Those meetings are scheduled for July 9 through 11. Invitations have been sent out. After that, we'll also take a look at the data, student performance data on those particular items at a data review meeting. Those meetings are scheduled for August 28th and 29th. Looking ahead in the future, we're also wanting to plan a content review of some new field test items. We're planning to have that particular meeting the week of October 7th. So speaking of the field tests, for ISAT science testing in school year 1920, we're wanting to have a field test at the elementary, middle, and high school levels. Here's the tentative window that we have planned right now. We're also planning to administer those ISAT science tests in grades 5, 8, and 11, but that is, of course, pending board approval. I want to remind everybody this is going to be a new assessment, and it is going to be a field test, which meaning we're basically just seeing if the items perform the way we want them to. So that means there's going to be no scores for these particular ISAT science tests for any states, districts, or teachers. But if you want to see how the students performed on those, be sure to sign up for those next summer meeting workshops next summer.
Shameless plug. A shameless plug.
Exactly.
No questions for science at this time, so we can move on to our next section, ISAT. You want to take this, Kevin?
Sure.
Awesome.
Again, thanks so much for everyone for making the ISAT summative testing window such a success again this year. Just a quick snapshot of how many students we have currently, I guess, tested for each one of the grades. If you have any ideas for any kind of PD that you would like the State Department to come and run for your particular school or district, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're concatenating those and planning out our summer PD workshops as well. Looking ahead for school year 1920, wanted to put forth the interim testing windows. Of course, those are going to be available for grades 3 through 8 and high school. And those, of course, are always going to be accessible through the SDE and AIR portal. Also, another shameless plug, I recently participated in a workshop developing some resources for the Smarter Balanced Digital Library. I wanted to put those in front of you guys so you could take a look at those while you're planning out different activities to use for next year. There are lots of different instructional, professional learning, and playlist resources that are available through the digital library that Smarter Balanced offers. They're math and ELA, and again, I think it's an excellent repository for those resources. So while you're, I guess, planning out activities to do for your next school year, go ahead and check those out. They're available through our SDE AR portal at the URL listed below. And then also, of course, looking ahead for our next summative testing window, here's the current testing window for that summative testing. And of course, the test administration is also going to be available through the SDE AIR portal.
We do have a couple of questions. So the first one, will the field test next year in science be in addition to the current science ISAT test?
So no, it's not in addition to, it's basically in replacement of. So it's just going to be the elementary, middle, and high school field test for ISAT science next year.
And then Kelly Glenn has asked, when will the 2019-2020 state testing calendar be posted? Kelly, we are putting that up on our website in a draft form. We're still finalizing a couple of our assessment windows with our test vendors, but we'll have that up this week, so you can see that. I think it's safe to say you can roll most of the test windows from this year forward to next year, and you'll be fairly in line. So Anita has asked, will we have to test ISAT and ELA in math in grade 10 and field test 11th grade in science? Anita, yes. ISAT, ELA, and math is grade 10, and the proposal going to the state board next week will be to administer the high school science assessment in grade 11. I don't see any other questions, so if we can, let's go to the next. Okay, my section again, Idaho Reading Indicator. You'll see here Elena Gee is listed on our website or on our webinar today as our presenter for this. We're happy to welcome Elena to our team effective July 1. She's going to be our ISAT and IRI coordinator for English Language Arts Literacy starting July 1. Many of you have worked with Elena in the special ed team. She's been our RTI or MTSS coordinator for the State Department of Education for the last 4.5 years. And we are thrilled to have her join us. Her expertise in literacy will serve all of us very well as we continue the implementation of the IRI. As we shift into 2019-2020, we are planning some regional training for school and district staff in 6 locations, late September or early October. We'll be finalizing those schedules and getting that out to all of you very soon. But there is going to be an online learning module for instructional staff. This is to ensure our teachers have the adequate training in using the iStation system and the data to inform their classroom instruction and meet the needs of their students. These will be held monthly through the school year, starting in August and concluding in May, with 1-hour modules, and we'll be offering credit. We have a tentative schedule of topics, but not dates for those online learning modules that we'll be finalizing and posting here soon, but we would hope that our teachers will enjoy getting more information about the iStation system, the offerings, and the data and how to improve and inform instruction in their classroom. We are also working to convene a work group this summer to accommodate our students who are deaf and hard of hearing, blind and visually impaired. We want to develop an accommodated IRI in forms. So if you would be of interest in participating in that committee, if you have staff in your buildings that serve students who are deaf or hard of hearing or blind or visually impaired, would like to participate in that work group, we hope to convene that team together in July to begin looking at our options for an accommodated paper pencil administration for those students. as we have found and observed, the iStation assessment may be accessible to some, but not all of those individuals. So that's our next work group. Elena has also posted a reminder about the Fall Idaho Reading Indicator schedule that opens on August 19th and runs to the end of September. We do encourage you, if you pick the August month to administer the assessment, that you assess all of your students in the same month, or at least all of the students in the same grade level in the same month. There is a transition in August to September in the scores for students and what determines whether or not they're on grade level. So that's an option for you to spread your test window out, but we encourage you to test all students in the same grade in the same month. And the spring window there is the month of May in 2020. And now I'm going to turn things over to Karen Striegel.
Hello, everybody. Let's talk a little bit about alternate assessment science scores. I've gotten some calls recently about folks who can't find their scores, and thank you to our amazing Kevin. We found out why people couldn't get them. So what you'll do is you need to go to the Assessment Data Export application, ADIA. There's a user manual there, and you also need to download the Excel-based score report generator, and the directions for transferring the data from your ADIA download into the Excel file to create the reports are embedded right there. And what was missing was the Excel-based score report generator. And this screenshot shows what it looks like on the Special Education and Alternate Assessment webpage. It's actually right now the second green box, and it's the bottom of the second green box if you need links. And you'll need to go there also to download that Excel file report generator. And it also says if you have questions that you call Kevin because he's a rock star. Of course, if you want alternate assessment ELA and math scores, you're going to the ISAT portal, to the online reporting system, just like you do for all other ISAT assessments. Okay, and then finally, the proposed testing calendar for alternate assessments. The science portfolio will open on January the 6th. It goes through 5:00 p.m. on April the 6th. This is the last year we expect to be using the portfolio. There will be no changes to the science portfolio next year. Did somebody say no changes? Woohoo! The learner characteristics inventory will probably open in February. This is one of those dates we need to confirm with our testing vendor. We open the learner characteristics inventory. It's in the ISAT portal in the data entry interface before the window for ELA and math open, because that has to be completed before students can take their ELA or math test. So the alternate assessment ELA and math windows are the same as for the other ISAT testing, March the 15th through May 15th. This year, we're having an operational field test. You may recall that this year, every student who took an alternate assessment in ELA and math, except if they used the early stopping rule, there were field test items at the end of the test that every student took. Well, we'll be starting our computer adaptive alternate assessment. This year it will be an operational field test. Students will get scored. The scores will be available late summer, early fall. You know, since it's the first year, it will take a little bit of time. And I should have put on here grades 3 through 8 and 10, just like all the other grades, except for science, which will stay grade 10 for the portfolio, which is different from kids who are taking the ISAT science. They'll do that as 11th graders. Oh, it's summertime, woohoo! If you have any questions, then I'll pretty much be around all summer. Thanks.
We'll be around all summer. The question is, will anyone in the schools be around all summer?
Yeah.
Okay, we get a little lonely up here, so if you are around and you'd like to talk to us, we'd love to hear from you. Couple questions. Jody Barnes has asked, will 10th grade students who tested science this year have to test again next year as 11th grade students? Jody, the simple answer is yes. Is the iStation oral fluency part of the iStation program, or is it going to be an add-on requiring purchase? And will the SDE have specs for the headset? Kelly, we have a call with iStation on Tuesday, and we will have more information after that we will disseminate. So I appreciate the question, and thank you for bringing that up. We'll have more information following our call with iStation on Tuesday on the, I believe that's the 18th. I think that's all of our questions, so we can move on to the next section of our webinar. And that is Andrew with an update on English language proficiency.
Right. Good morning. Andrew Bennett here to give you some quick reminders along with some important information to chew on over the summer while we close out this year and begin to think about the beginning of next year. So due to a delay in the Access 2.0 for ELS data cleanup, the Access Appeals window opened on June 10th and will now extend through June 21st. The appeals site allows districts to review unusual testing scenarios that may want to be appealed. For example, you may have an English language learner who did not receive a composite score, who would be default count as a non-participant, but that didn't take the test in a particular domain, which was consistent with an IEP guidelines. Another example of an appeal situation might be you had a data error that you need to be corrected, such as a student who did not test because he or she was incorrectly identified as an English learner in ELMS. The appeal site is available to review student participation status and to make appeals submissions at the listed URL. IC users need to have the Access Appeals role assigned to them. So if you need permission to the appeal site, your district IT team can assign it to you via the admin tool application. If you are not sure about the appeals process or have more questions, it's always a good policy to ask. So please contact us at the SDE if you need more assistance. All Access participant appeals need to be submitted by June 21st for them to be considered by the department. So mark your calendar. Moving on, some important technology updates. WIDA has transitioned to a new test item management system to service our district schools and ELS better. This software download and update is required to run the WIDA screener and access for ELS assessment packages in the 1920 school year. District technology coordinators need to download the new central office services before August 15th to have uninterrupted access to WIDA's suite of assessments. As of today, WIDA has posted information on the transition from TSM to COS on the WIDA Secure Portal and has completed the first of 2 webinars. That was this morning. The remaining webinar can be accessed by following the link on the slide under August 1st, and users will need an account to access the content on the WIDA Secure Portal website. Again, the existing test site manager will expire on August 15th. Technology coordinators or district test coordinators are encouraged to make this important switch as soon as possible to avoid any hiccups in August and September. If you need assistance in setting up a new account, please contact your district test coordinator or by emailing DRC. So as a reminder, the 2019-2020 school year is a screener recertification year. All individuals who plan to administer the screener will need to be recertified. Proctors will need to have a WIDA Secure Portal account and will need to complete the screener training by logging into the portal to complete the required quizzes with a score of 80% or higher. Recertification will be posted within the Secure Portal for quizzes taken on or after July 1st. So make a note that Idaho has already solidified many professional learning opportunities for the 2019-2020 school year. This year, Idaho has purchased 6 self-paced e-workshops, which can be accessed anytime between September 1st, 2019 to August 31st, 2020. The self-paced e-workshops guide individuals through a series of topics that offer relevant and practical content for teachers who have ELS in the classroom and schools. So some of the topics that will be covered will be leading for equity, language of learning mathematics, and doing and talking STEM. So we have some great offerings coming in the new year. Other e-facilitated workshop dates have been selected as well. The WIDA Screener, Access 2.0, and Alt Access Overview workshops will be presented in a live webinar format and will be presented on the dates listed on this slide. We encourage you to mark your calendars to make sure that you don't miss your opportunity to interact with a national expert on these topics. All teachers are invited to participate in the self-paced e-workshops and the e-facilitated webinars to increase their depth of knowledge in their understanding of how to better serve our multilingual learners in Idaho. The 2018-19 e-facilitated webinars and the supplements are now available in the WIDA Secure portal under the download library. So check those out. We had some great offerings earlier in this year. We currently have identified tentative dates for the main access for ELS 2.0 test administration, along with the access makeup administration date. For the main test administration window, we have a start date of January 27th through February 28th, 2020. The last week of the testing window is recommended for makeup sessions and is slated for March 2nd through March 6th. Again, these dates are tentative and will be solidified in the coming weeks. So we look forward to another successful testing session. And if you have any other questions, please reach out so we can get those answered.
We do have a question from Jody. Our district test person attempted to attend the WIDA Tech webinar this AM, but couldn't get in. Will there be a recording available? If so, where?
The short answer is yes. The recorded webinar that was given today will be posted in the download library of the WIDA Secure portal. I was assured that it would be posted either later today or tomorrow. So be looking for that.
There's also an additional live webinar in August if folks would like to participate in the second opportunity for that. Turning things over to Paul.
Thanks, Carlin. Hi, everybody. This is Paul Kleiner, the NAEP coordinator. Today I'm going to talk about the NAEP long-term trends. Idaho will be participating in the National Assessment of Educational Progress long-term trend. The NAEP long-term trend is the only assessment that we can look all the way back at scores from 1971 for reading and 1973 for math. This is unique because we can see how students are faring compared to students who took it nearly half a century ago. The last time this version of the national assessment happened was in 2012. Different than the NAEP that happens every 2 years, this one will sample students who are ages 9, 13, and 17, rather than 4th, 8th, and 12th grade students. So students could be selected across grades depending on their age. Students will all take the assessment at different times of the year. 13-year-olds attending middle schools will take it in the fall, 9-year-olds at elementary schools in the winter, and 17-year-olds at high schools will take it in the spring before school is out. This is a national study, so when there are national studies, Idaho often represents rural education. Very few students and schools will be participating in the 2019-2020 NAEP long-term trend. Another point of clarification, because this is a national study, the results we will see will be national level. To summarize, Idaho is participating in the NAEP long-term trend, and we are excited to see how our students perform compared to other generations from every decade after the cry by President and Congress for better education due to Sputnik 1.
Whoa. Wow. That puts a generation in perspective.
Huge.
Yeah.
We do have a question from Mike Nelson.
Oh.
What do you expect will be the local or statewide benefit of looking at the long-term trend?
That's always a good question, Mike. Thanks for the question. We can see how rural students are doing across the nation, and that's always valuable for Idaho to see, especially over time, over a long, since the 70s. Things change, and on this large of a scale is always interesting. Another thing, when we do look at national level results, we don't just get the United States, we can actually break it down a little bit by rural in the West. And so we can also see how Western states are faring compared to Eastern, Southern, and Northeastern. So we can break it down a little bit smaller than nation, but this information is good for U.S. Congress, and Idaho can learn about how students are doing over time.
I think back to your question, Mike, also you mentioned at a local level, there are no local results. So we're not looking at how students in Coeur d'Alene fare on a long-term trend. This is really at a more 30,000 foot or maybe even 80,000 foot level view of student participation. And I think looking also in trends in education reform and education practice across the country over the course of 30, 40, 50 years, and how education policies have maybe influenced outcomes and changes in expectations for students. So this is a really unique assessment and a really unique comparative when you think back to a test administered before many of you on the phone even entered elementary school.
One more.
Yeah.
Kelly Glenn said, when and how will districts and buildings know if they have been selected to participate in the long-term study of nature?
Perfect. I wanted to do today's webinar, but tomorrow I'm sending out district notifications for those who are selected. Like I said just a second ago, there are very few districts.
Less than 10.
Yeah, less than 10 districts and less than 10 schools even. So next week, schools will find out from me as well.
Mike has also asked, do we expect a similar NAEP test distribution as we participate in the longitudinal study?
Yep.
And no, not at all. It's a much smaller sample,
yep.
Mike. So less than 10 districts and schools will be participating from Idaho, representing, national level statistics. I think that's our last NAEP question.
All right.
So now it's you, Danielle.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Educator score release is on June 24th. How does your school view their scores? Scores are released on the College Board K12 Reporting portal. Your school should have a staff member designated with a role as an access manager. This individual has access to all within the portal. They can view scores, create reports, and have the responsibility to designate others into roles within the K12 reporting portal. If your school does not have an access manager, your school's principal will or have received an email from College Board asking to designate an access manager. If you or your school needs help accessing the K12 reporting portal, please contact our Idaho support email, and the email address is on our slide. The College Board has developed a brief training module on how to update your K12 reporting assignments, as well as how to navigate the K12 portal. I have included the link on the slide. Please pass this along to anyone who needs it. And as an FYI, anyone interested in completing the module, they do not need a College Board account, so anyone can do it. And I wanted to say a big thank you to everyone who participated in the PSAT and MSQT School Day intake form. Completing this intake form ensures critical communication and tasks are sent to the appropriate people. So thank you again. I really appreciate it. As well, test materials can now be ordered from College Board's test ordering system. All PSAT and MSQT test coordinators have received an email with instructions on how to order testing materials for the 2019 fall administration, along with other test day information and deadlines. If you did not receive this email, please contact me as soon as you can to receive more PSAT and MSQT information. I see we have a couple of questions.
So Cammie has asked, is there any way we can get scores in May, SAT scores in May next year? June is too late for graduation. Cammie, as we work with our vendor and the College Board on our contract for next year, we will look at those deliverable schedules again and see if we can't push back some of those dates. Some of those things are controlled by the College Board, and some of those also have to work in the department timelines and schedules. So we'll be taking that under consideration as we work with the College Board on our contract going forward. We appreciate that feedback.
That's it.
Okay, no more questions. We'll hang on here for just another minute or two, but just a reminder, we do take a little time off this summer. We do not have a webinar scheduled in July or August, so we'll be back with our webinar in September. You can review past webinars if you'd like to relive the exciting school year we just concluded with us. And those are posted on our accountability assessment accountability website. You can also read prior newsletters. We will not have another newsletter until August, so we'll take a little bit of a break. I hope you all enjoy a wonderful warm summer and enjoy time with your family and friends and rejuvenate before coming back next school year. It looks like we don't have any other questions. As you all know, if you do have questions after the webinar, please reach out to us. We're here to help. And we hope you all have a safe and wonderful summer. Thank you.